Yo, okay, hello. Today's been a long day for me, but today I'm talking about it may look like I'm talking about units, right? With me having three Ubers on the screen. However, all three of them have something in common, and that thing in common is freeze. I need to talk about freeze. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about freeze in the Battle Cats that a lot of people either overlook or just choose not to look at, or they just don't think about it. So first of all, I want to talk about freeze overall rather than looking at Kronos immediately. Freeze on its own, well, it's basically just a slow, but instead of 1% speed, it is, or not 1% speed, instead of a flat line of 1 speed, it is 0 speed, as well as pausing whatever animation they are in. That is what freeze does. And, well, yeah, this doesn't really show anything. And it, freeze compared to slow and weaken may seem like the overall best. However, I mean, it's just balancing things that separate them. Like, if freeze was always guaranteed on 100% uptime like weaken usually is, then it would be way better than it really is. But since it's balanced around being freeze, it's balanced around being the best of the statuses. And so it doesn't actually wind up being the best in a lot of scenarios. And Trixie's a prime example of that. Same with Kronos, and honestly, even Ice Cat. But Ice Cat's just for me to prove to you how good freeze can be and how different other units use it for. Ice is here for a good example of freeze, when freeze is really fucking good. So I'll go ahead and start off with that. Freeze! Ice Cat does exactly what you would think. She completely freezes anything for 4 seconds with easily stackability, whatever. That doesn't really matter. She has, 4 second uptime. 4 seconds is kind of a lot, considering it's freeze, and so nothing that is frozen will even attack. So you can get really good, rushers. You can get damage off from your front line without having to worry about dying, all that stuff, right? So not only is the freeze preventing the opponent from pushing, but it's also allowing for you to deal a lot more damage than you would without, without the freeze. You'll get more damage while the freeze is up than whenever it's down. You know what I mean? It's been a long day for me, so I'm slightly winded. Excuse me for talking weird and having to catch my breath every now and then. But yeah. So, Crystal, of course, only targets red, right? But Kronos targets anything, right? And has an LD. And has quite better stats overall, except for damage, but that's negligible. Also, I want to talk about how Kronos does not deal a lot of damage, actually. Kronos' multi-hit makes it so that most of her damage is, actually not done. I'm not talking about Kronos right now. I'm just saying she's weird. I think a lot of people overestimate how much damage she does, but that's besides the point. It's her freeze that everybody talks about. The 1 second freeze with all of these hits. Something that you may notice is that these hits are 2 seconds apart rather than 1 second apart, considering the 1 second freeze. That means that without a freeze combo, there's going to be increments of 1 second about. Of course, with treasures, it's going to be a little less. Well, barely less. It's not very noticeable with only a 1 second freeze. But that leaves about a second between the freezes and the next attack. Meaning that if something has quick movement speed, or if it got knocked back by the previous hit, then it's going to be able to push a little bit, or avoid the next attack. Especially if she freezes something with this hit. This is at 4 seconds. There's 5 seconds just about between this hit and the next hit. There are 5 to 6 seconds just about. So that means that her uptime between attacks isn't very good. It's mostly during her attack cycle that she's actually doing anything, and it's only 1 second. 1 second, unless timed well, is not actually going to be able to allow for you to get much damage off. It's not going to let you get rushers in. And Kronos on her own is not really that great of support from what I've noticed. I have used Kronos a lot, And something that I can guarantee you is that using her on her own, she is not as top tier as a lot of people let her seem to be. She relies on other support in order for her to be good. She is really good at supporting your team rather than, you know, being a solo carry, you know? Like, there's a very big difference there, and I think Kronos is still really good, but not as good as people seem to think she is, or not good for the same reasons why people think she is, you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, her LD is really good, and her freeze is really good still, but it's just not as good as, let's say, a solid freeze, or, you know, something that would have quicker attack frequency. Maybe I should have brought in Luna, but I can think about Luna in a second. But first I want to talk about Trixie. Trixie kind of has the same problem as Kronos, where her freeze isn't 100% uptime, nor is it even 100% chance. Which that, you know, allows for a problem of she's letting things push, right? Like, the freeze is inconsistent, it's not reliable in order to completely stop something like Bomber or ICAT or stuff like that. And this is when freeze... So Kronos and Trixie are prime examples of when freeze isn't at its peak of use, right? It's mostly a defensive thing that is used for support. Like, small amounts of support, just for, you know, just for added crocs rather than actually helping your entire team on their own. Ice Cat can basically completely shut down red stages just because of the consistent freeze. You know what I mean? And like I said before, it allows for you to rush in with Bahamut or any rusher. It allows for you to get melee hits in from lower range units. It allows for you to get things in, you know. Not to mention, Ice Coaster Guy has way more range than Trixie does. So the actual freeze effect is much more wide span and much more usable against, like, things that would be in the back. Of course, not very back. Kronos can hit the things in the very back, while Ice Cat cannot. That's not what I'm saying. But you know what I mean, right? Like, man, I think I'm putting myself under a little too much strain right now. But I think you get what I mean, right? Is that there's different kinds of freeze. Not all are built equal. Not all freeze Ubers are built equal. A lot of people would say, oh, Kronos has a total of 3 seconds of freeze on anything with a trait. Yes, that is true, but honestly, I think I would rather it be a solid 3-second freeze from one attack rather than a split 1 second freeze between different attacks. Obviously, yes, Kronos, if you use a combo, it's actually really good. But without combos, and let's be real, freeze combos don't usually have good units as part of them. It's a little questionable. It's a little questionable. But it is still, like, good, you know what I mean? It's probably worth it if you use Kronos and have the spare room. But I don't know if a small will do the trick. I mean, it's a full second. It's almost, well, a full second without treasures between the freeze and the attack, so I actually have no idea if you can even fill that space, but you can slightly fill a space, like a little bit at least, with combos. So that would somewhat solve the problem, if not fully at the very least. And then Trixie, of course. Trixie is just inconsistent because it's 50% chance while only having, like... I mean, I say only, but it's... Her freeze is good, but it's inconsistent. And it's just unreliable, especially with her low range. It just, like... I don't know how to describe it. Trixie's still really good, though. Like I don't want to make it seem like I'm, you know, calling Kronos bad and Trixie bad. A lot of people misinterpret what I say. I'm just saying they're not as good as I think a lot of people think they are, just because they think of freeze as, oh, it's the best status, you know, da-da-da-da, and they're not looking at it as its own thing. They're just looking at it as, oh, freeze is better than knockback, it's better than weaken, it's better than slow. You know, people aren't looking at it as what it is just because they have in the back of their mind, hey, this is the best status, you know? Like, 10-second attack frequency, that's long for a support Uber, especially one that only has 3 seconds of uptime out of 10-second attack frequency. Like, that's... I mean, even with freeze, it's kind of unforgivable in a lot of stages. Like, you... Like, as good as it is, it's not the best. And it's actually not quite that good, because you can easily get rushed down and all that. Especially if there's traitless in the stage. Kronos doesn't target traitless. And of course, Ice Cat only targets red, but this is another thing where I say specialists are better than generalists, but I think you already know my stance on that. I think I got my point. I also want to mention that freeze. I also want to mention something else about freeze. Earlier, I mentioned how freeze only stops the animation that they're currently in. That means that it does not actually shorten, or it does not like pause their timers, right? It doesn't pause the opposing timers. The only thing freeze actually stops is their movement and their animation. It does not stop their time frequency or attack frequency timer. So let's say you're freezing something like an elephant, right? It has like however many seconds between attacks. That timer will still go down whenever it's frozen. Same with Neandum, same with literally anything that can be frozen. If it's frozen, the attack frequency timer will still go down. Which is partially why Kronos and Trixie are actually worse than Ice Cat in terms of like actual freeze. Because longer freezes can actually stun them during their attack animation. However, not everything with a long TBA has a long force swing. And so Kronos and Trixie can stall that, but not as well as a solid freeze. Because sometimes they'll just get interrupted. You know? So that is another thing to mention. That is why Bomber and Ice Cat, or not Ice Cat, iCat, Apple, whatever, are so good at their job, is because they can completely stop. Like, that's why permafreeze is good, right? It's because you can completely stop all attacks. You don't have to worry about openings and all that. So, I wanted to talk about this because, I don't know, I feel like freeze might be given too much credit, almost, just because, like, not a lot of people see it as, oh, you know, not a lot of people see the balancing factors, which is what Lucas talked about in his video about Weaken. Obviously, I know I mentioned Lucas a lot, and it seems like I always agree with him. I don't. I like his points, and I like his point of view sometimes, and I think that instead of talking about one of the most overlooked statuses, I should talk about probably one of the most overrated statuses. But obviously, my talk topics aren't as good as his, because editing is not for me. I do not want to spend days editing a video, especially since I'm not very good at editing. But yeah, well, there's that. So if you did enjoy, please do come back for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.